A familiar face has the best odds in the Big 12 to win the national championship in 2025. That's right, it's the Utah Utes, and it's not crazy at all. I'm going to tell you why on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time listening to the show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with everyone in the YouTube comments, as well as on social media. We can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started today. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by KSL Sports' Alex Napoles. And Alex, look, when this came out, Circa Sports came out with their 2025-2026 odds to win the national championship. And if you rank the Big 12 teams, Utah and Kansas State are tied at plus 2,500. And you got to go almost all the way to the bottom before you get to likes of like a BYU. Even Colorado is not in the top half of the conference. So it's Utah, Kansas State, Arizona State, Baylor. But Utah and Kansas State are tied for the highest odds to win a national championship. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised when you look at this. But hey, I'm not saying that Utah is the best team in the Big 12 right now. But I do think it's crazy to be like Utah couldn't win the Big 12. They addressed their biggest need in the offseason. They have completely they've upgraded their offense. I don't see how any way the offense takes a step back. Like, they will be better on offense. Does better mean Big 12 championship? No, but they can absolutely be a contender in this conference. I think when you look, there's a lot of reasons too. It's very rare we see a team that's really good. Bill Conley made this point in his ESPN article. Very rare you see a team that's in close games that the following year and they win a lot of those close games. It's rare you see them do that 2 years in a row. Utah lost a lot of their close games. I think there's a lot of reason that Utah can be a bounce back team in the Big 12. And if they were to get in the college football playoff with the style they play, with the offensive linemen returning up front, with the veterans on defense, Devin Dampier's dual threat abilities, they could pose problems for teams. So I think this makes a lot of sense to me of why Utah, according to Circa Sportsbook, why they look at Utah and go, that's our national championship favor amongst Big 12 teams. I track with it. Do you?
I could see it, and we can make an argument for it, right? Yeah. I don't think it's a...
That's what I tried to do. Yeah.
I don't think it's a crazy thing to look at and just automatically kind of downplay it, because as we saw last year, JT, this Big 12 conference is incredibly unpredictable, right? You had the Arizona State come out of nowhere and eventually win the conference. Arizona and a couple of Oklahoma State, who also had high expectations, and Utah, quite frankly, ended up at the bottom of the conference. And so it's a topsy-turvy conference with a lot of things, a lot of unpredictability. And so why not Utah, right? You mentioned that they fixed a lot of the issues, or on paper, they fixed a lot of the issues on offense with bringing it back and kind of revamping and rebuilding the offense. If Utah is able to have anywhere near the offensive production that Beck and those guys were able to have at New Mexico, you pair that up with Utah's defense and start playing complementary football again, this could be a really good Utah team. So why not? Why can't you make the argument for Utah? And look, let's temper our expectations. We're not coming on here and saying Utah's going to win the national championship.
No,
because that's not what we're saying.
Thank you.
We're saying that
I can see that BYU fan already in the comments that's trying to say I'm saying that already.
That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that there's a possibility for Utah to take a step forward and again, compete in the Big 12, and obviously that's a big stepping stone. If you can compete in the Big 12, that's a big stepping stone to getting closer to winning a Big 12 championship, and of course, making it to the college football playoff, which I think should be the ultimate goal.
It should be. I think Utah's less than a 1% chance to win the national championship next year. I'm not going to say it's completely impossible, because I almost watched an Arizona State team beat Texas, and crazy things could happen from there, but there are levels to college football. Utah's not a tier 1 team. They're not a tier 1 program. But the reason this all just, we look at this in general, is just because, hey, it is still crazy to see Utah ranked as second, just tied for first amongst Big 12 teams. And I do think this is a program respect thing. If you look at a Utah and a Kansas State, they've earned the benefit of the doubt. Chris Kleinman, Kyle Whittingham, constant professionals as coaches, deliver and get the best out of their teams each and every season. Kenny Dillingham has proven to be that. Hence why I look at Arizona State and go, okay, that's why they're third on this list. So when you look at a team like, okay, who are the picks to win the Big 12? Like, how are they going to be able to do it? You need elite coaching. Utah has that in Kyle Whittingham. Did it take a step back last year? Like, maybe, yeah, we did some things wrong, but it was more than anything, just watch the games, quarterback play. It's what it came down to. Not saying that all of a sudden Utah's got a good quarterback. They're winning every single game. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying there's a lot of reason to believe this team can bounce back next year. I think they will be in the thick of the race. I think they're going to, I feel comfortable right now saying, I believe Utah will have a bounce back year and finish in the top 4 of the conference. That could be considered a bold statement. I totally get that. Devin Dampier, Jason Beck, the offensive line, Morgan Scalley's defense. I like these pieces. And if you're looking at the program respect that Utah has earned for their overall history, I think this makes a lot of sense, as I said, Alex. I mean, how confident are you in this Utah team and what they can do in 25?
It's obviously going to come down to that offense. It's going to come down to Devin Dampier stepping up. It's going to come down to mitigating injuries.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of the issues on offense, right? What would have been different had injuries not plagued that Utah offense? Well, and quite frankly, the defense too, right? Karene Reed missed a handful of games. Yeah. Junior Tafuna missed a handful of games. And so
Asa did too. It's a lot of them.
Exactly. And so obviously stay healthy first and foremost. And then if they can stay healthy and figure out things on offense, like I said, if you're playing complementary football, Utah still were in close games in this conference, right? You off the top of my head, that TCU game where you're basically in it the entire time, you're just unable to score on your home turf. Those types of games, how different would they be if you have an offense who can move the ball and get the job done, right? And so if that's something that Utah is able to do this upcoming season with the new offensive coordinator, with the new quarterback, with new running backs, right? Then we're probably having a different conversation where Utah can be competing and hopefully putting themselves in a position where you're fighting for one of those top 4 spots in the Big 12.
That's definitely the hope next year. They have the pieces in place to do it. Can they execute? Will they get the bounces? Because, I mean, that's what it comes down to a lot, too. You need a little luck on your side, but Utah's got the players to put themselves in position to get those bounces, and I can't wait to see how it's going to play out. I took a little shot at BYU fans because, and not all BYU fans, just the 1% that, of course, of every fan base that drive everyone nuts. I'm going to say as BYU right now, I do not think you should be as low as you are on this list. BYU's outside the top 10. That, to me, I think they're outside the top 10. I mean, math is mathing. But, I mean, you look at BYU, what they did last year, like, how is TCU above BYU? That, to me, seems crazy. Just for when I look at the talent the Cougars return, the respect I have for Kalani Sitake. And I know Sonny Dykes got there a couple years ago. That, to me, seemed more like a lightning in a bottle season. What BYU did last year to me seems more sustainable. I would have BYU in the top 5 of, like, for these, like, we're ranking teams that win a national title. Well, you need to win the Big 12 in order to do that. BYU would be in my top 5. How would you have the Cougars?
I would easily have them in my top 5 as well.
Yeah.
And I hesitate to say that again because the conference is just so unpredictable, but with how much returning talent they have and with the people in charge, Jay Hill's defense is phenomenal. Kalani Sitake is also a phenomenal guy. And so as long as Kalani's at the helm and as long as he has the team playing in the belief that they played with this last season, BYU is going to be in the mix as well. Utah and BYU can both be 2 top 4 teams in the Big 12 conference next season. But again, someone's going to rise from the bottom. We saw that with Arizona State. We saw that we saw, honestly, teams like Houston probably did a little bit better than most people thought they were going to, right? And so a lot of unpredictability in this conference. Someone's going to rise up in the ranks. And then I think Kansas State will probably also be up there. Those are my top 3. And then there's going to be that mystery team that rises up.
There always is. And I just have too much faith in the Kansas State football program, the Utah football program, for what they've done overall to say back-to-back down years. I don't see that. Could it happen? Of course. I'm the guy who said Utah was going to win the Big 12 last year, and that obviously didn't happen. So this stuff is all like crazy, just wild time. We'll see how it all comes out. But one thing that is going to massively determine who will end up winning the Big 12 is the schedule. We know who Utah is going to play. Don't know the order. We're going to find that out on Tuesday. Want to get you prepped for the schedule release. We're going to be doing that in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel has you covered, and they are your place to head over for all things Super Bowl 59. That's right, it's finally here, the biggest game of the year, and one game, two teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field. And the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets in the Super Bowl, now that's just the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of Super Bowl 59. And speaking of Super Bowl 59, Alex, I got my eyes on the Chiefs in this one still. They're favored by 1.5 over the Eagles. There's a lot of other bets we can talk about throughout the week on this show, but I'm ready to call it even on this Sunday when we're recording. I think the Chiefs three-peat. I'm not betting against Mahomes, not betting against Andy Reid, not betting against Kyle Whittingham's, I think it's his grandson, son. I think it's Alex Whittingham there. I blanked on it there. But either way, and unfortunately, I have to bet against Britton Covey then. But I'm rolling with the Chiefs. How do you see it?
Oh man, the Super Bowl. I think I'm right there with you, JT. It might pain me a little bit to say it, but until somebody can dethrone Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And the three-peats on the line, I think that'll serve as extra motivation. I think they'll get the job done, and we'll probably have another Kansas City Super Bowl win.
Feels like we're heading towards that, but we'll see. However you're feeling, head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today. All right, Alex, talking Utah's 2025 schedule. All the other conferences have gotten to get their schedule dates out. Everyone else, Big Ten, SEC, even ACC, they get to plan all their trips. They've had everything in place. Big 12's taking their time. We've known the opponents for quite some time, but Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, we are finally going to hear what Utah's schedule looks like. And I'm excited. I want to hear the order of these games. That's something that's massive. I remember last year, a key stretch we thought of Utah's season was we looked at this when the schedule dropped and hey, Oklahoma State and Arizona State, or Oklahoma State and Arizona. Those are two massive games that are going to define Utah's season. And it's funny how that didn't end up coming to fruition too, but there were rough stretches, road trips that you can kind of navigate and see and kind of plot out like, okay, how set up for success are you? So that's what I'm looking to see is where the bad breaks come in this schedule for Utah. And I'm excited to just finally get it.
One, yes. I'm excited to get it and to be able to break down and predict what we think, who we think Utah will beat and see where they end up, right? I'm excited to get that, obviously, but then I think what most people are going to be excited about and what most people probably already have circled is they want to know when that BYU game is going to be down at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, because there's going to be a lot of people in the fan base and probably people inside the locker room who are going to want a little bit of revenge, and so that one's going to be circled, of course, automatically from the top.
Well, and then the Keanu Tanuvasa transfer piece of this, Carson Ryan too, but just the way Tanuvasa's played out. Like, and I don't think there's bad blood between the players. I don't know that. I'm not in the locker room, but anytime you're going against your brother on the football field, you want to beat him. It's just the extra added motivation.
Absolutely.
Now that these two teams are going to play year in and year out, like we're a year removed from everything that happened with Mark Harlan. We're a year removed from the penalties and some of the close calls there, the plays that were made. Like this is where year after year, the rivalry's fantastic to have back, but when we can look back directly on a year ago, what happened, it only enhances it. Think about Ohio State and Michigan, how enhanced that rivalry is because we've seen how much success Michigan has had recently because they play year after year. So a lot of fun road games to see where are they going to get placed. I mean, you have to go to Baylor. I think Baylor's going to be good this year. I already mentioned BYU. Kansas. Are we getting end of the year Kansas? Are we getting early year Kansas? That's another piece of this that is incredibly fascinating. And you do get, Arizona State coming to Rice-Eccles Stadium, that worked out very well for Utah the last time that happened. So I'm hoping that's the case again. 55-3, get Colorado there, Texas Tech, Kansas State. Utah playing Kansas State's incredibly exciting to me. Once again, last year coming into the Big 12, top three brands were Utah, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. And they were still top. Utah and Oklahoma State really had a rough go. And I know Utah did too, but if you look at what happened overall season, some of the things that went there, I just have more faith in Utah bouncing back than Oklahoma State. I mean, I'm the Utah guy, so you can take that with a grain of salt. I'm just excited to see. I do think wherever the dates fall down, I think there are some tough road games, no doubt, but also some very favorable scheduling things for Utah on here.
100%. And I mean, you look at, Cincinnati wasn't a team that this Utah team played this past season. So you'll get your first look at Cincinnati in the Big 12. The same thing can be said about West Virginia, right? People, I've heard a lot of positive things about the atmosphere in Morgantown, and so yes. I think that would be awesome for Utah to go out and experience as well for the first time. So, no, I mean, obviously looking forward to these Big 12 teams that you're going to be seeing for the first time since joining this conference, like the Cincinnatis, like the West Virginias, like the Kansases. But there's going to be a lot of, I guess you can say, revenge games. I don't know if that's the right word, JT, but there's going to be some revenge games on the schedule for Utah this year, specifically looking at that Arizona State game, looking at that Colorado game, right? Going against the Heisman winner and basically giving him a little bit more highlight film and then kind of running up the score on Utah. I don't know how the animosity will be there between Colorado, considering that those two guys are gone, but still a lot of revenge games potentially for Utah on the schedule as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's 1000% that. What's nice is we already know when Utah's first game is going to be. Their non-conference games are scheduled at UCLA, starting it off in the Rose Bowl. Can't wait for that one. Then you face off against Cal Poly, then Wyoming. I believe Utah, they're going to go they should have anything else go 2-1. I don't see how they don't do that, but they should go 3-0 to me. They are better. What we think Utah is capable of, we're going to learn a lot about right away. If you lose to a rebuilding, retooling UCLA team that's going through it right now, that doesn't bode well for you and in the Big 12 schedule. Like, you can still turn things around. We've seen Utah have bad losses and do that before, but you got to get off to a strong start against the Bruins, to me, Alex, especially like this Bruins team, this Bruins program. I just think it'd be a bad loss for a team that's going to still have a lot of excitement and hype in what most people view as should be a bounce back year for Utah.
100%. And it starts with UCLA. And I think that's a perfect opponent, honestly, to start the year off with, considering what happened last season. As you mentioned, it's a rebuilding UCLA. They've not been the best in recent memory. And so what better venue to go out there to, like the Rose Bowl, and get your first look at this offense, get your first look at this Utah team. If you don't win that game, it's not the end of the world, though. No. It's far from the end of the world. If they do end up getting a negative result from the Rose Bowl against UCLA, you can look, depending on what happens, you can see that as either, hey, this is a team that's in the process, or maybe it's just a bad performance and they end up not being the offense that we think they're going to be.
Mm-hmm. That could be the case, and that's where this game is incredibly exciting to see how it plays out. I cannot wait for the Rose Bowl. For those of you that say, JT, why do you think UCLA is down? How about the fact they're paying Eric Bieniemy $1 million not to be their offensive coordinator? That's a lot of money that's a lot of money. I'm not even saying anything about Eric Bieniemy. Like, it's just saying, like, if they felt they needed to move on from him and they're willing to pay $1 million, that just shows you, like, if you're firing an offensive coordinator, do that. That shows you're tweaking some things, and Utah is clearly, and UCLA clearly doing that. On today's show, rounding us out, want to talk some Utah basketball. Let's start with the men's team first. Nice win against Cincinnati. I mean, one you'd want to see Utah. It was a good win. I mean, this is a Cincinnati team. At one point, like, they were a top 10 team in KenPom, so to see them get the win was incredibly exciting. But then as soon as you're like, okay, this kind of feels like it's been all year with Utah. Like, okay, maybe feel a little bit better about them. Then you're going to go on the road and lose to a bad Oklahoma State team. I mean, Oklahoma State 3-7 in conference action. Utah 4-6 now too. And yeah, I mean, letting the Cowboys get a nice win. You get Thompson go for 20 in there. Asar had 18, Madsen 15, but just one of those games, like, you let Oklahoma State score 81. That's why I think this feels icky too. So just another kind of mixed bag for Utah men's basketball. We knew it'd be tough in the Big 12. You beat a Cincinnati team. It's like, oh, it's a pretty good win, even though you're home, good win. But then you have a bad loss on the road. It feels very on par for what the season's turning out for the Utah men's basketball program.
And I mean, that win against Cincinnati is exactly what you wanted after playing Houston, who is one of the best teams in the country, and playing Baylor, who is a really good basketball team, right? Mm-hmm. Putting up 36 against Houston, that's tough. But you took the battle to Baylor, and that's what you want to see. You want to see that bounce back. And then obviously you get the win against Cincinnati, but then going and shooting 25% from 3 against Oklahoma State, that's tough. That's tough. And I think, yes, we're expecting mixed results for this basketball team's first year in the Big 12, but there's a lot that still needs to be cleaned up for Utah. I feel like there still needs to be a lot to be cleaned up for Utah before they can potentially compete in this Big 12.
I think that's the thing with this year 4 for Craig Smith. Like, you just want to feel like things are heading in a positive direction. And right now, that's where I think it's disappointing. It's frustrating. The getting blown out like they did. It's one thing. Losing to Houston's not bad. Getting absolutely embarrassed and looking like you don't belong in the same conference, not good. Not good. So, and I've said before, I think Craig Smith's a very good basketball coach, but I think it's hard to win at Utah. And I think there's definitely been some recruiting misses throughout his tenure, and NIL's made it tough too, to try and keep some guys that have come on. So it's not easy, but it's not going to plan right now. The Utah women's basketball season, though, very much going to plan. They're 16-5 overall, 7-3 in Big 12 action. Got a nice win against an Arizona team that they should beat, but still nice to beat on an old Pac-12 foe. 67 points. They beat them. They beat the Wildcats, who only put up 58. Gianna Napkins continues to just be on a tear. I mean, 28 points, 100% from the free throw line, 9 for 9, 7 rebounds for her, 8 of 15 from the field. Led this team all the way. Madison White had 14-2 chipping in. Jenna Johnson with 10. Just a really solid win for Utah at home, getting it done. But I'm so impressed with what Coach Peters has done with this, continued to do with this team after what happened at the start of the year with Lynn Roberts departing for the LA Sparks job. And I think this Utah women's basketball team has a long postseason ahead of them.
Yeah, and I mean, anytime they take the court, you can see the potential that this team has. And you got to give them credit. I can't imagine it would be easy to lose your head coach a couple games into the season, right? I can't imagine any situation where that would be kind of easy to navigate yourself through. But they've been able to navigate the waters, continue to play a fun brand of basketball, a good brand of basketball, and of course 16-5 on the year, still putting yourself in a decent position to, of course, get a good seed when it comes to tournament play once we get there, and of course giving yourself confidence and give yourself a boost once you get to the Big 12 tournament. It'll be interesting to see how they do in the tournament, but I have to give them all the credit in the world for continuing to be what looks to be a good unified team through losing your head coach, because like I said, I can't imagine any situation where that would be easy to get past.
Mm-hmm. And the Big 12, it's not the Pac-12 for women's basketball, what it was, but I mean, still good. I mean, you look at Kansas State, 11, TCU, 9, Oklahoma State, 24, West Virginia, 21. That's even not including a Baylor team that's off to an 8-2 start to. Iowa State, I'm still surprised they're only 6-5 with the talented players they have too. So it still could be a tough conference. I mean, Utah being 16-5, I think they'll have a chance to get ranked again. Gonna have to rattle off some more wins along the way. But yeah, I mean, obviously men's and women's programs and drastically different positions, and we'll continue to monitor their progress throughout the season. That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. Alex, you're the man. Please let everyone know where they can follow your stuff at.
Absolutely. You can find me online at Napoles Alex. Of course, I wear many different hats for KSL Sports, whether that's soccer coverage, whether that's high school coverage, whether that's football, whether that's basketball, you name it, I'm there. So you can follow all of my stuff and get a little bit of local news from just about anything at Napoles Alex.
Alex, you're the man. Thank you again for stopping by.
Thanks for the invite, JT. Always a pleasure.
The wait is over. Utah's schedule will drop tomorrow. We'll have a full preview tomorrow on what to expect from the schedule, as well as talking all the latest in recruiting and everything Utah athletics. We hope you'll stick with us at Locked On Utes.